everyone, and welcome to the thru Recovery Life Podcast. My name is John A., and I am an alcoholic in West Palm Beach, Florida. My sobriety date is September 13th, 1982. Let's have a moment of silence to reflect on what we're about to do here today, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we're going to start off, as we usually do, with a quote by Albert Einstein. If you cannot explain it simply, you do not understand it well enough. In this session of the Zukru Recovery Life podcast, we are going to discuss letting go of unhealthy fears. We started with one recovery meeting on Zoom in late March of 2020, the day after the pandemic shut everything down in Florida and around the world. We didn't know anything about Zoom at that time, but we quickly learned and did very well on the Zoom platform because we have a message of recovery that helps many people. We are just learning about producing podcasts, but we're quick learners and definitely have a message of recovery that we feel can benefit many people. We adhere to the anonymity tradition by not showing our faces or using our last names in the podcasts. And the reason we call ourselves the Zoo Crew is because although we are deadly serious about sobriety and recovery, we want to show others, mainly newcomers, that sobriety is not boring at all. You can visit our website at thezoocrew.org, thezoocrew.org, and please feel free to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can be notified when we upload new videos. And feel free to comment and share this video with others in recovery or looking to get sober. And if there are any topics you'd like to have us cover in future podcasts, please send us an email at zoom247aa@gmail.com. That information will be in the description. You could be doing anything else right now, but instead you're listening to our podcast. We are happy to have you here making this investment in your sobriety. You're making a huge deposit into your IRA, your individual recovery account, by showing a commitment to your sobriety. So keep making these deposits no matter how small, because one day you may have a situation that will require you to make a huge withdrawal, and you don't want your IRA to be depleted. The reason we have these workshops and podcasts is to work on the underlying issues behind alcoholism. If alcohol was the problem, most of us would be cured by now. Alcohol was but a symptom. And oftentimes, the ties that bind us are more mental than physical. For example, in India, one method of training elephants was to tie a baby elephant to a tree trunk with a thick, heavy chain, thereby severely restricting its movement and almost immobilizing it. After a long time of this treatment, all an elephant handler had to do was tie a rope around the elephant's neck and put a stake in the ground to keep the elephant in place. The elephant is so conditioned to thinking that it is unable to move that some of them have been found dead in place after a fire. All the elephant had to do was try to move, and it would have escaped the fire, but it thought it was still chained to a tree. And by letting go of unhealthy and irrational fears, you will be freeing yourself from what's keeping you from being happily and usefully whole. And this is from the 12 and 12, page 15. AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. You will also be breaking the ties that bind you and keep you from growing. So it is very easy to stop drinking. Everyone listening to this podcast has stopped drinking at some point, even before coming into AA. Even if it's for 1 hour or one day, everyone has stopped drinking. The problem is staying stopped, and that's where AA comes in. Alcoholics Anonymous is about helping us stay stopped for the rest of our lives, one day at a time. So, how do we stay stopped? The answer is in the 12 steps of AA. There may still come a time when you will have the obsession to drink, but if you have invested enough into your IRA, your higher power will help you deal with that obsession and not drink no matter what. Sobriety, however, is not just about stopping drinking. Sobriety is changing our behavior, our actions, and our mindset so that we can be happy, joyous, and free, free from the obsession of alcohol. All right, now to our topic. We're going to start up with healthy versus irrational fears. Many people in AA like to use the acrostic or initialism fear, FEAR, for false evidence appearing real or forget everything and run. Those two examples are not acronyms. SCUBA is an acronym, but I digress. What is a normal fear in comparison to an irrational one? Most of us are fearful in situations that pose a real threat to our health and safety, and our automatic fight or flight response kicks in. This is perfectly normal. But when the threat is non existent or exaggerated, our fear can usually be classed as irrational. And please don't listen to anyone who tells you that there is no such thing as healthy fears. Healthy fears keep us alive and well, happy, and healthy actually. And there really is such a thing as healthy fears. For example, it's very healthy to fear walking down a dark alley at midnight. I have a morbid fear of alcohol in my system. I'm not scared of alcohol in a container, but alcohol in my system, I morbidly fear that. However, fear should not be allowed to run rampant through our lives so that it becomes such a devastating factor that it produces failure. The problem is not getting rid of fear, but using it properly. Someone has said that the basis of action should be love and not fear. Theoretically, that is true, but in practice, it does not work out that way. There are legitimate fears. Fear of ignorance causes you to seek an education, and fear of poverty makes you work. Fear of disease motivates you to practice healthy and sanitary living. Fear of losing your job will inspire you to show up on time and do the best you know how to do. Fear of failing a class will drive a student to spend extra time in the books. Fear of losing our family inspires us to be faithful to them, work hard for them, and show them love on a daily basis. However, if the evidence is real, we should certainly have some healthy fear. There is real fear in walking across a busy street without going to the corner where the lights are arranged for that purpose. There's legitimate fear in driving your car at excessive speeds under any conditions, but particularly where the visibility is poor or the streets are slippery. We must learn to distinguish those helpful fears from the harmful ones. When you can do that, fear is a friend. Until you learn to do it, however, fear can be an enemy. And courage is not the absence of fear. It's okay and only human to have faith and fear simultaneously. Courage is having fear, but going forward anyway. And the example I like to use is on 9/11. On 9/11, every one of the first responders was scared, but they ran towards the burning buildings. Some will say, why have fear if you have faith? Again, I say that as a human being, you can have both faith and fear at the same time. That the thing is not to let fear paralyze you. But what does our literature say about fear? Big Book, page 62. Selfishness, self centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, driven by a hundred forms of fear, self illusion, self seeking, and self pity We step on the toes of our fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt us, seemingly without provocation, but we invariably find that at some time in the past we have made decisions based on self, which later placed us in a position to be hurt. Big Book, page 68. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. Big Book, page 68 again. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. Big Book, page 73. He is under constant fear and tension. That makes for more drinking. Big Book, page 84. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. Big Book, page 84 again. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Big Book, page 104. We have had long rendezvous with hurt pride, frustration, self pity, misunderstanding, and fear. Big Book, page 145. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Whenever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries, and arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. 12 and 12, page 49. So when A suggests a fearless moral inventory, it must seem to every newcomer that more is being asked of him than he can do. Both his pride and his fear beat him back every time he tries to look within himself. Pride says, "You need not pass this way," and fear says, "You dare not look." 12 and 12, page 51. Did fear and inferiority about my fitness for my job destroy my confidence and fill me with conflict? Well, that's what our literature has to say on fear, and I'm sure that's only some of them. I'm sure there's much more, but we touched on a few. Now, are are only alcoholics fearful? Please don't think that only alcoholics are fearful. I think I've said this before. Uh, Fear is a natural, powerful, and primitive human emotion. It involves a universal biochemical response as well as a high individual emotional response. Every human being has some fear that drives or debilitates them. Again, it's all about having the fear but going forward anyway. It was only normal to be a bit fearful and apprehensive when you first started coming to AA meetings. Fear of the unknown is normal. I'll bet dollars to donuts that most people are fearful when they start the 12 steps, especially steps 4, 5, and 8 and 9. They cannot and do not let those fears stop them from taking those steps, however. The observation that fear causes anger raises neglected issues about emotions. How common is it for emotions to cause other emotions? What are the mental mechanisms by which one emotion can lead to another? How fear can lead to anger. This is an article from Psychology Today. Here are some more examples, starting with negative emotions. If you feel confused, you may feel anxious that you don't know what to do. If you find something or someone disgusting, you may feel contempt for that person. And being with someone you envy may make you feel angry that they have advantages. Feeling guilty that you've done something wrong may make you feel anxious about being detected. Being disappointed about not accomplishing some major goal can make you feel sad. Feeling disgusted about something you've done can make you feel ashamed, and shame can provoke embarrassment, which can then lead to anxiety. Feeling regret about something you've done may make you feel guilty about it. More positively, feeling proud of an accomplishment can help you feel self-confident. A humorous interaction can help to generate emotions such as relief, happiness, and security. Falling in love can make you feel secure, but can also provoke anxiety about the solidity of a relationship. The emotions that contribute to falling in love can range from admiration to lust. Adoring a person may increase your romantic interest, and sexual desire may intensify into craving. If you get relief from a stressful situation, that will enable you to feel calm. Appreciating somebody else's pain emphatically may lead you to feel sympathy toward them. Triumphing over adversity can make you feel pride at what you've accomplished and also joy about your accomplishment. When you are surprised by something, you will find it interesting. And again, that was from an article from Psychological Today. Fear, irrational versus rational fear, determining the effects of both types of fears. And this is from an article by Andrew Walden in April of 2019. I'll put a link in the description for to that article as well. Fear is very common, and anyone who says that they're unafraid of anything is probably lying to you or to themselves. I'm afraid of the frogs. Seeing pictures of them makes me shudder, and seeing one near me can make me panic. I'm also afraid of failing. I've built a reputation for being successful in school and into my career, and the thought of people seeing me fail either pushes me to do better or crash into a bundle of nerves. The point is, each of us have our own fears, rational fears and irrational phobias, and how we handle our reaction towards it. While your emotions are valid, it is important to recognize fears that are real and likely to occur at the right time for the right reason, and fears that are a bit out of touch with reality and only likely to cripple a person physically and mentally. These are the rational and irrational fears. In this article, we delve into psychology to tell the difference between rational and irrational fears, the difference between the two, and how either can affect your physical and mental health. If you believe you have a mental condition that hinders your ability to think rationally, seek counseling or psychiatric help to be diagnosed and given the appropriate treatment. Differentiating rational and irrational fears. The main differences between rational and irrational fear involve two factors: the likelihood and logic of your fear coming to fruition and your body's reaction towards the fear. And by determining whether or not your fear is rational or irrational, it can help you to make to it can help you take a step further towards facing these fears head on. Rational fears. Calling rational fears realistic fears may be true, but it's not accurate if you're comparing it with irrational fears. It's possible to be afraid of water in both cases, but if you're on a rickety boat in the middle of an ocean and get caught in the storm, your fear of drowning is rational. But if you're in your shower and are afraid to turn the water on because you're afraid of drowning, then that becomes an irrational fear. A rational fear is one where your fear is something that can harm you or someone you care about. If you're afraid when your kids play outside because you live on a busy street, the fear is rational because they're likely to get hurt if they're not careful or a driver doesn't see them until it's too late. Here are some examples of rational fears: fear of getting stuck in an elevator while riding a very old unit, losing your home because you haven't been paying your bills and rent for a while. Your neighbor's loud and aggressive dog startles you when it barks. Getting attacked by a bear while hunting in a bear filled forest. Failing to be accepted at the only college you applied to. Human nature has an instinct called survival. So when we see or feel something that triggers our fear, that translates to a physical or mental response. It is a logical fear with a presence that rationally triggers the fear. Whether or not you admit it, your body can sense danger and makes you feel fear. And the reaction to your body and mind says how well you react to those fears. Irrational fears. The same fears mentioned above can still be an irrational fear if the context or the reason to fear is highly unlikely. It's a rational fear to be afraid of getting attacked by a wild bear if you're in a forest with bears. But if you're afraid of bears and live in a penthouse in the middle of the city and don't want to go out of your building because you're afraid a bear might attack you, that becomes irrational. Irrational fears aren't just absurd fears. What separates these fears from rational fears is that the amount of fear or reaction you have is exaggerated, as what you fear is likely to be harmless or has a low risk of occurring. Some examples include fear of clowns in a children's party, losing your home because an earthquake will swallow your home whole, your neighbor's loud cat can rip you into shreds. Cat scratches can hurt, but thinking a regular sized domestic cat can kill you is exaggerating the fear that is unlikely to happen. Thinking your whole life is over because you failed a test. It's easy to dis- it's easy to distinguish rational and irrational fears as separate when we use exaggerated examples such as these. But at times, the idea of splitting fears as rational or irrational may not always be accurate. A fine line between the two. Let's say, for example, a parent or someone you love is diagnosed with a fatal disease. They can die within the next week, or they may die in 10 years. Doctors can't say. The fear for your loved one is rational because the risk of death is there. But at the same time, it's a given fact that everyone is eventually going to die at some point. So it's irrational to fear for your loved one's death because we can't deny the inevitable. Or take the fear of failing at work or school. You work hard to excel, but if you see a sudden decrease in your grade, it's rational to fear it will affect your grades. But at the same time, in the greater scheme of things, your grade for one term of school or a quarter of the work year won't really make a bump in your life. So it's also an irrational fear. The truth is that sometimes a fear is either a rational nor irrational fear. If what you fear only has a chance of appearing, even if it is logical, it still falls under the definition of both rational and irrational fears. Some fears can be labeled as specifically rational or irrational because at times it's difficult to differentiate between the two. In truth, both fears are valid, especially when they have the same physical and mental effects on your body. The important difference is whether or not your fears drastically affect the way you live. What happens when you're afraid? I mentioned earlier that the survival part of our early human instinct is still a part of our senses, and it's true for both rational and irrational fears. These are the typical and mental effects of your fear. Physical effects. Fear is a form of stress. When your body senses you are scared or stressed, it releases cortisol, a steroid hormone that comes from your adrenal glands. Cortisol flows through your blood to the different parts of your body, preparing several organs for what is known as the fight or flight response. In the early days, this cortisol was particularly life saving. When cavemen saw a wild animal like a lion, for example, they feared for their lives, causing stress, which then triggered the adrenal glands to produce cortisol. Their fight or flight response, therefore, is to choose to either run away, or fight back. Cortisol prepares your body for either. Your heart rate increases, so there is more oxygen in your muscles and brain, preventing you from fatigue. Your lungs breathe faster to absorb more oxygen. Your eyes see better, while unnecessary body systems like your digestive, urinary, and reproductive systems temporarily slow down to focus your energy with the stressor at hand. Naturally, after you choose to fight or flight and you're far away from the danger, your body will slowly return to normal. Today, now that we aren't constantly being hunted down by lions, the fight or flight response now has to deal with both physical and mental stressors. Some fears, especially rational fears, can be dealt with because you can face the fear head on, and then your body returns to normal. However, when you're dealing with both rational and irrational fears, the idea of facing your fear trigger is much more complex, which could lead to anxiety, which could also lead to other mental conditions. Physically, when you can't deal with your fears or you're always afraid, your body will continue to release cortisol, putting your body in a long-term state of fight or flight. Your body is meant to return to its normal state after this response, so when exposed to cortisol for long periods of time, your body can have long-term effects, including diarrhea, nausea, colds, high blood pressure, migraines, asthma, and heart attacks. Now for some mental effects. When you can't really determine the fear and your body's response to it, you begin to develop anxiety. This is the constant feeling of being worried that something bad is going to happen. In worst cases, anxiety can affect your everyday life, your hobbies, or even your sleeping pattern when your body is always on edge. Anxiety has been linked to depression and other mental conditions. Some people may continue to function even with mental disorders, but if they don't address their fear and the effects, it could have long term effects on your health. Some treatment. The best treatment is to face your fears while it is still a mild fear. It's okay to recognize fear, and it's okay to be afraid. What's not okay is letting your anxiety and fear dictate how you run your life. In some cases, people with agoraphobia, the fear of feeling unsafe in public or private spaces, never set foot outside of their homes because they feel they're not safe there or anywhere. As a result, they develop depression and anxiety. Depression because their life is hindered and limited to the corners of their home, and anxiety because they're always afraid of the outside world. In severe cases, when these fears are taking over your body, it is necessary to seek medical attention. A psychologist may help counsel you regarding your fears, while a psychiatrist can also do that as well as provide you with medicine to control your anxiety and other mental conditions. Whether you have rational or irrational fear, if you react with physically or mentally, it is necessary to face these fears head on. If you feel like your fear is hindering the way you want to live, talk to a psychiatrist that can help you and walk you through your anxieties, give you proper medication, and provide you with suggestions on how to help you conquer your fears. And again, this is from an article by Andrew Walden, dated April of 2019. And I will put a link to the actual article in the description below. Some common phobias. Phobias are distressing and disorienting emotional responses to real and imaginary situations or objects. They are conditioned by faulty generalizations and learning, and the consequences is irrational and involuntary fear. To the sufferer, a phobia can seem insufferable and unbearable or even life threatening, while others might find these uncanny and unusual phobias quite fascinating. Let's look at a few more of the common phobias. Glossophobia. The fear of public speaking, also known as glossophobia, tops the list as one of the most common phobias in the world. The term comes from the Greek words glossa and phobos. Glossa meaning tongue or language, and phobos is the personification of fear in Greek mythology. Glossophobia, along with other social fears, develops in childhood around the age of 13. The idea of making a presentation in public is the number one fear reported by people in the US. A glossophobic person is unable to control the overwhelming nervousness and may have a nervous breakdown whenever confronted with such public speaking engagement. Glossophobia can be directly caused through a related trauma or distress. Almost all the glossophobic people are distressed about being embarrassed in front of the public. It can be resulting from any such previous distressful event that happened during speaking in public. And from my observations, some, if not many people you see in the media, such as movies, TV, and radio, suffer from this phobia to some extent, but they persevere. And personally, I was not comfortable talking to even one person unless I had a few drinks. I did not know how to engage in social intercourse without liquid courage. After getting sober, I read tons of books on public speaking. I went to Toastmasters to practice public speaking. I had to get out of my comfort zone till it became comfortable. And it did not happen overnight, but it did happen sooner than later because I knew that I had to change. And let's look at some other phobias. Arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. Nyctophobia, the fear of darkness. Social phobia, the fear of social situations. Agoraphobia, the fear of open or crowded spaces. Thanatophobia. The Thanatophobia is an extreme and irrational fear of death. Acrophobia. Acrophobia is an extreme or irrational fear of heights. Claustrophobia. Claustrophobia is the irrational fear of confined spaces or enclosed spaces. Aerophobia. Aerophobia, also known as aviophobia, is the fear of flying, either in airplanes or helicopters. And what can you do about, well, actually, let's go back. We can't forget every alcoholic's worst nightmare, fear of running out of liquor, running out of alcohol. Is there a bigger fear for an alcoholic? So, what can you do about fear? You can also apply a psychological tool called sublimation. We all experience unwanted impulses or urges from time to time. How we deal with those feelings, however, can mean the difference between acceptable or unacceptable behaviors. You can use your fear, anger, and other emotions or character defects to your advantage. Some people in your home group don't think you can stay sober. Well, you can use that anger and show them that you can stay sober and be the best version of yourself. It doesn't matter what helps you get and stay sober initially, because eventually you'll be staying sober for yourself. Acting on these urges is the wrong way to be inappropriate. So finding ways to deal with such desire is critical. One way that people deal with such urges through a process that is known in psychology as sublimation. Through sublimation, people are able to transform unwanted impulses into something that is less harmful and often even helpful. So, this is how sublimation works. Consider what might happen if you are overcome with anger. An emotional blow up is one way to deal with these feelings. But such expressions of anger, uh, but such expressions of emotion can be harmful. For instance, you might find yourself with damaged relationships and a reputation as a hothead. Rather than fly off in a fit of rage, what if you channeled those angry emotions into some type of physical activity, such as cleaning your house? You might spend a few hours angrily scrubbing down your kitchen and bathrooms. Once your feelings of frustration eventually subside, you are left with a positive result, a sparkling clean house. This is one way of how sublimation can transform negative impulses into behaviors that are less damaging and even productive. The bottom line is that you are not powerless if you have a higher power of your understanding. You are not powerless over your fears. You can do something about your fears if they prevent you from being happily and usefully whole. Prayer and meditation are also great ways to help you deal with almost any fear. You also may not have to overcome your fear in one day. Baby steps might be what the doctor ordered in many cases. And please remember, courage is not the absence of fear. And it's okay and only human to have faith and fear simultaneously. Courage is having the fear and going for it anyway. And I'd like to leave you with a few quotes on fear. This is by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He who is not every day conquering some fear has not learned the secret of life. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Susan Jeffers. Those who know fear knows caution. Unknown author. So I highly suggest that you get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone until it becomes comfortable. And do not be afraid of faking it till you make it. It will be uncomfortable, very uncomfortable, uncomfortable as heck, but do it anyway. Again, I know personally, my years, first probably 5 years, everything I did was out of my comfort zone. Sometimes I would act as though or feel as though I was hovering over this person doing these things and saying, because that's not my nature. Even doing a podcast like this is not my nature, but I had to change. The same person will drink again. And if you don't change, your sobriety date will definitely change. Same thing if you don't continue to change. And the 10th step promises, Big Book pages 84, 85. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. We are neither fighting it nor are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we had been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react, so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And again, that's the 10th step promises of Big Book, pages 84, 85. And this ends our Letting Go of Unhealthy Fears podcast. But before parting, I'd like you to get to know hope so that you can get to know recovery. Because if you have no hope, there might be no recovery. Be a hope dealer and think about the hope that is conveyed in the passage below. This is from the Big Book, page 164. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find, and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And let's take a moment to reflect on what we did here today, followed by the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the thru Recovery Life podcast on letting go of unhealthy fears. My name is John A., and I am an alcoholic in West Palm Beach, Florida. My sobriety date is September 13th of 1982. Please feel free to visit our website at thezooCrew.org, thezooCrew.org, and you can like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can be notified when we upload new videos. Feel free to comment and share this video with others in recovery or looking to get sober. Drop us a line if there are any topics you'd like us to cover in future podcasts. Again, thank you very much for listening.